episode of Paul's Railroad. On today's episode, we are going to get started on the layout. Now, as you can see beside me, behind me, this big old mess on these tables here, this was originally going to be my big, huge N scale layout. But with how things are going today with the coronavirus, there have not been any model railroad shows anywhere near me open lately. And as you well know, I'm trying to build this railroad on a budget. And I was planning on going to the shows and picking up used N scale track to build my layout with. So since I can't get to the shows and I don't have any track, well, not a lot of track, I'm changing directions. Another reason why I have not started this yet is I'm also considering building an HO scale layout as well. I'm still going to do my N scale. I'm thinking about using these big tables here for HO scale. So I have started something with the N scale. It's quite a bit smaller than I wanted to have started with, but it's going to be something that's running. It's going to be hopefully look cool. And let me bring you over here and show you where I'm at so far. Okay, this is the N scale layout that I'm going with. As in doing things inexpensively. This piece of foam I got from a friend. He had a piece of furniture, let's say, delivered to his house, and this is part of the packaging. It measures approximately 29 inches wide and I think 58 inches long. So I came up with the track plan. This is nothing super original. I looked at a lot of different track plans in different books, and I modified it to fit within this space and with this Bachmann EZ track that I own. I have all this Bachmann EZ track because I bought several starter sets when I first got started in this hobby. Of course, they all come with track. Um, this is going to be something, it's small, but we're going to have two sidings. We're also going to have some areas here that we can do some changing of cars and some little bit of working around. I think it's going to be pretty neat. Um, what I'm going to do today is, as you can see, I've got a spot here and a spot here that there is no track. And that is because with this track and putting these turnouts in, it changes the overall dimensions, let's say, of these tracks. You know, these tracks that come in a kit, they're made to make circles and ovals, and they're all measured out perfectly for that. And when you start throwing in turnouts that had different dimensions in the 5 inch or 10 inch pieces of straight, it throws things off a bit. Now you can buy a little variety pack of different size pieces of track, and I probably could have done that and filled these in. However, I have so much of this track that I'm probably not going to use that I'm just going to sacrifice a couple pieces, and we're going to cut them to fit. So that's what we're going to get started on today. Okay, I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Okay, the first thing that we're going to need to do, because this is the Bachmann EZ track and it is mounted to a plastic road bed, is you have to remove the track from the road bed. And it is extremely simple. This track is very lightly glued down. The piece in front of you I already have had removed. I don't want to tear any more apart unless I have to. But all I really did was, the first thing I did is I kind of grabbed it and I just twisted it and flexed a little bit and I popped some of the ties loose. Then I took this very thin spatula. I do believe this is, oh, I don't know what they call them. It's used for like oil painting, stuff like that. And at that point in time, all I did is, once I got it a little bit loose, I was able to slide this underneath of it and just do like that. Slide one end off and just bring it down. It came in two pieces like this. Like I said, very, very minimal, no damage to the track, whatever. You can see on the back here where the glue was. So anyways, that's how I take apart this Bachmann EZ track. So, you know, technically I could take it all off if I wanted to, but there's no reason for that. Plus I have the Bachmann turnouts and I can't take those apart. So the height of the track would not be right if I took the road bed off of everything else besides the turnouts. Okay, let's move back over to the layout and I'll show you what I'm gonna be doing there. All right, this is the first section of track that I'm going to be working on. And let me show you how I'm going to do this. It's relatively straightforward. I'm just going to take this section that we're going to cut. I'm going to place it in here. Now, mind you, before I did that, I went through and I made sure the track was tight. All the seams, all the joints were where they're supposed to be, no gaps, so I can get this as accurate as possible. So anyways, we put that piece of track in. And I'm just going to take, Sharpie, whatever you got laying around, move this just a little bit here. And I'm going to mark the tie, the rail, where I want to cut. Simple as that. Now, in order to cut this, you can buy railroad snips that are made specifically for cutting um, rails, and they leave it nice and square. I don't have that, and I don't really feel the need to buy that because I have a Dremel tool with cutoff wheels. So that's what we're going to use for that. So we're going to move to the other workbench. We're going to cut this off with the Dremel tool. All right, we're at my main workbench here. And as you can see, I just grabbed a block of 2x4 to cut into, and here's the track laying out. And here's a little cutoff wheel I'm going to use to cut this track. Pretty straightforward, just nice and slow and straight. Cut these off as even as I can. Um, I'm going to turn the sound off for just a minute while I do this. So you don't have to hear this thing running. Okay, just as simple as that. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my nippers. I'm going to nip this plastic back away from these ties a little bit. And I'll put the other joiner on here, and we'll go over to the table and see what it looks like. I'm also going to see if I need to file these down just a little bit. I don't think it's going to take too much. That's the nice thing about using the Dremel tool. It gives you a nice clean cut. So, all right, let's see how well it's going to fit in there. One thing I did do is this is the end that we cut. As you can see, this is the factory joint end. So I slid this rail back a little bit. I took an X-Acto knife and I cut off the little nubbies that hold the rail down to the ties. That way the rail joiner on this side can slide under that much easier. So, moment of truth, huh? Okay, that side's in. There we go. Perfect fit. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this roadbed piece and this piece of track back over to my workbench, and I'm going to see if I can cut this to make it fit underneath there. I may not have the joints on both ends, these little joining pieces here. I may only have it on the one end, but we'll see what I can figure out. Well, alrighty. There is our first section of track filled in. There's a little bit of gaps between that and the other side there. Um, I'm sure that once we get this track glued down and we start ballasting. So I'm gonna put a little bit of ballast on this track to make it look more realistic. We'll hide most of those gaps. And I'm not worried about this being loose or anything. It's got the regular rail joiners on it. I'm going to solder. I'll definitely solder this really well. I'm going to solder different parts of this track together so it doesn't move too much. Now, to cut that piece of plastic was relatively simple. I'm sure you probably have one. If not, I suggest getting one if you're going to get into model railroading or any hobby. Is this little razor saw and miter box. You can buy these. Heck, you can buy these at Walmart even. They sell them everywhere. And of course, I just marked it, stuck it in here, and cut it in half. Took a file to clean up the edges. And Bob's your uncle. And we got a custom-made piece of track. Again, the hardest part was getting the rail joiner off of the whole piece of track. Other than that, it was really straightforward, very simple. I'm going to do the other section now. I'm not going to show that. Once I finish that up, we'll throw a locomotive on this track and make sure that it runs pretty smooth. Alright guys, I have the new cut sections of track glued to the road bed, and while that is setting up before I install it back on the layout, let me show you something I figured out doing this. Might help some of you. If you're using the Bachmann EZ track and you need to do what I've done, and I have a feeling that most of these composite tracks like this are going to be similar. I don't know if you can see, right there's a rail joiner. As you can see, that looks like a little spot welt. Now the first one I tried to pull off, I tried just pulling it off, and I completely mangled it getting it off. So I figured something out. Seems to work relatively easily. First thing that I do is you have this little flange sticking out here. I'll take an X-Acto blade. Let me zoom out here so we can see it better. Take an X-Acto blade, or anything kind of sharp. I just kind of get in there. Well, if I come off camera, let me hold on just one second. Let me readjust here. Trying to work around a camera is not always easy. Anyhow, all I'm going to do is just get this tipper and just lift it up. You see I lift it up just a little bit. And I have this old beat up straight pair of tweezers. Really narrow little pointy points. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to, doesn't really matter. I'll slip one end down there and kind of push it in there as far as I can get it. I have this little anvil here. I'm going to put the head of the rail, I'll put up against the anvil so the rest of it's free floating. Got this little hammer here and give it a couple taps. We have to give it a few more taps than what I just gave it. Yeah, so this is the easiest way I found. Still didn't say it was easy. Get it back in there. Oh, there we go. It's broke loose. Okay, there we go. So there's your rail joiner. I mean, it's a little mangled back here in the back end, but I just cut this little tab off. And the rest of the rail joiner is pretty well unmolested. It looks just fine. So again, a little tip there to get these off. Hope it helps somebody out. Now let's get over to the new layout and run some trains on it to see how these new sections work. Hey guys, I know I said we were going to run some trains, and we will in just a minute, but I came across one other little issue when I was putting these rails back into place I wanted to share with you. I don't know if you can see here, but on the ends of the rails where they join at from the factory, you can see right in here, it's pretty thin compared to the center where we cut this road bed. So the rails didn't weren't very even. And I didn't like that because it's not going to make for a good running train. So there's two choices. One, simple, quick, and easy, is cut those little tabs off. I didn't want to do that only because I hate destroying good track. Just personal preference. So what I did instead is I just took a file and I filed it down thin. Nobody's ever going to see it, so I don't care if it's messy or not. Anyways, just something to keep in mind if you do this. Again, I'm sure that most of these tracks with the built-in road beds are going to be very similar as far as how they are constructed. Okay, no more talking. Let's get this together and run some trains. All right, folks. We have the SD40 and some rolling stock on the track on this new Mintra layout. The first thing I want to do is I want to run her around the outer circumference of the track, make sure it runs smoothly, and then we're going to do the intersections where I have the new pieces that I custom cut and fit. So let's take her for a spin. Yep, the outer sections seem to work fine. Now that makes me happy. Even our little sidings with the custom cut and fit tracks seem to work just fine. Well, I just want to say thank you for joining me for another episode of Paul's Railroad. I hope you learned something today. I know I sure did. As I have mentioned many times before, this is my first dive into model railroading, creating a real layout. Only other experiences I've had was playing with trains as a child. Um, Cutting out these sections of track was a little daunting. Even though I have plenty of track, as you can see behind me, it's mostly the curve track, which when you buy starter sets, you get more curve track than you can ever use. So it's a little daunting routing some pieces of straight track, which I don't have much of. But it works just fine. As you saw the train going around the perimeter and the sidings of this track, I had no issues. So again, I hope you learned something. I hope you liked what you saw. If you did, please subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and share it with your friends. Help me build this channel. Help me grow it and something great for the community. So until next time, take care. Thanks again for watching Paul's Railroad.